So let's talk about how we got here. The event is March 16th, 1994. You're in Germany to take on Vader. But let's talk about just those WCW European tours.
Yeah.
This is a time where here domestically, frankly, the house show business is not what we would call strong.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like when you go overseas, you're going to have a much bigger house. But boy, it was a different way of life compared to quote-unquote making towns here in America, was it not?
Yeah. I never really liked... I liked the freedom of being in a rental car.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of what I loved about wrestling. I loved making the towns, for the most part. And in WCW, my first year there, until Abdullah and company parted ways, I was with Abdullah. They waived the three wrestler limit. You had to have a minimum of three. For me and Abby, they let us go two, and they let me rent a caddy. So I haven't rented a caddy since '91 because it's not in the budget. But so I enjoyed riding with Abby. I enjoyed making those towns. I didn't enjoy being with the group all the time. 24/7. That's too much. I love the boys and the women, but I'm kind of a loner. I like my hotel room. I like my long drives. So it was different, and also we were doing some shows in the old Eastern Germany, which was run down. It was dirtier. Wasn't real cheerful, when you're doing...
You weren't in a tourist town.
Right, we weren't in a tourist town. We did the tour of Dresden, because of its, it's a famous city in the course of human events. But coming back to Munich is a western town, it still had this feeling of dreariness to it. The whole tour did. I think it had that feeling of dreariness for me because I had worked so diligently on my German. Made it clear to the powers that be that I could cut promos in German and do interviews in German. And this is where you read the writing on the wall. When one by one the WCW stars are being brought onto TV shows and whatnot, and here's the guy who worked on the German, speaks the German, cuts pride, and you're not using him. I thought it was an intentional. This is where I'm gonna risk sounding bitter, but if I'm going to be honest, I was bitter about it. I felt I was bitter enough about it, and felt slighted enough that I gave my notice after this incident. This is where I really read the writing on the wall, and thought, man. This is wrestling. This is the one line of business where losing an ear is not only not a bad thing, but it could be a great thing. It doesn't matter that Leon did not actively help me get out or that he did not actively put me in there. I was in a match with Vader where my ear was ripped off my head, and that seems like as close to a license to print money in WCW as we had. It didn't matter that we worked 6 months earlier on this is new, coming out of the gates hot. And when I saw none of that happening in the build-up, and none of that in the aftermath, and then given the conversation I had with Rick on the night of the show, which was that they were going to turn me back heel.
So the night of the event,
yeah,
you met with Rick, I assume, before.
Yeah, before.
And does this happen in the arena?
It's in the arena, yeah. And
so he comes over and says, "Hey, Cactus, I want to talk to you."
Yeah,
sort of deal?
We had a long talk, and it was based almost exclusively around. And this is what I took from it. Rick might have another. He might say, "No, this here was the basis of the conversation." What I took from it almost exclusively was that the beatings I had taken at the hands of Vader, Rick said they're the most brutal beatings he'd seen, didn't result in a jump in the ratings. This is a time when they're judging the ratings not by 15-minute increments, but by 2-hour ratings. And you and I discussed before that we shouldn't be so beholden to the ratings, that they might tell a different tale, and you can't tell what percentage of those people are into it on a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10 or into it on a 10.
Yes.
And if you're losing some of the 1s and 2s, but you're gaining more of the 8s and 9s and 10s who are heavily into it, it's something that I could see and feel when I was out there. Like, I felt like I was one of the top guys in the company, and I felt like the babyface run had worked, and that I could work with just about anybody in the company and have a good match. At the time, they were now teaming me up with Max Payne, and I liked Max, but I also understood it was a little bit of a step down from those main event programs, which I was okay with, because I'd watched a lot of wrestling, especially basing it on the old WWF I used to watch. And you realize that guys would take a step down and be in a program, and then all they need is the right angle to boost them back up.
Right.
So I wasn't as concerned about the push until Germany, until it was kind of the trifecta. One is, now as I'm saying trifecta, there might only be two, but one was the complete lack of use of my skills I brought to the table in Germany, and I guess the big one was refusing to do anything
with the ear,
which just seemed.
But what did Rick say
afterwards?
Well, you said.
Well, he just said you're a heel. But as the basis of saying I was a heel was that, I could say, hey, just listen to the fans. They're behind this thing. But the main thing was the ratings, because they lived and died on the ratings. I remember going up to the office. May or may not have been the time I brought the exotic dancer up with me to get my check. I can't remember. But it was on the door, it said, "Welcome to WCW, home of the 3.5. I think it was 3.5 they'd done on a Clash of the Champions ratings. And I think it was also the date that Harley Race brought in the Kongs, and Jesse had a field day talking about their ring attire.
Yeah.
So nobody gave the Kongs the credit. You had that ability to see into the ratings whatever you wanted to see.
Sure.
And a few people had benefited. I think Rick really benefited from a high rating when they featured, they did like a Ric Flair tribute show or something, and while he was with WCW. And after that rating came out, I think Jim Hurd's state of mind was, we need that guy. And Rick wasn't completely happy in WCW, and so within a few weeks or a couple months, Rick was back in WCW. And of course, he's Ric Flair, and he's always going to make an amazing mark on the product. But I think the fuse was lit when they saw the rating he had brought in.
So when Rick is having this meeting with you, at different points, Rick was sort of running creative. Now, of course, he to this day denies that was the case, but he definitely had input.
Yeah.
Did you get the takeaway or the vibe from your meeting with him? This is Rick's idea, or this was something handed down to him saying, nope, they're not buying him?
I did not know.
Yeah.
I did not know. I can't remember if any plans were revealed to, what Cactus Jack would do as a heel, because I would have loved to have wrestled Rick. I would have worked myself into the best shape I possibly could and done my best to, work up to the standards that Rick had set. But I didn't feel the need for it because I knew that the babyface thing was working.
Yeah.
And once the injury happened, I did work out my time in WCW as a babyface, so there was no turn. But I just thought that was a
missed opportunity.
A missed opportunity for sure.
At that point, I know we're skipping around a little bit, and we'll talk about what happened right here in Huntsville, Alabama one day.
Okay.
But did you and Rick, what did you think Rick thought of your performance and your persona in '94? Did you know that was, because, he wrote in his book that you were a glorified stuntman or whatever he wrote.
Right.
But you didn't have any inclination to think he thought that way in '94, did you?
No. My dealings with Rick, especially when he came back, were largely positive. I'll say this. I think Rick yelled at me twice after matches, and the next day apologized on both those occasions. And he didn't need to do that. It was really, big of him, considering where he was in the business and where I was. I'd be lying if I told you I had any idea what Rick thought of me as a performer in '94. I don't really know.
I just know sometimes we fans hear that, guy A doesn't like guy B for whatever reason, and therefore just dismisses him.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a professional rivalry, and sometimes it's just personally they don't like the guy. But you didn't get that vibe at all when you're having this conversation with Rick. It felt like a business decision.
Yeah, I did. I didn't feel like he was screwing me over. I felt like this was the answer they had arrived at, conclusion they'd arrived at, and I just disagreed with it.
In the scheme of things, it doesn't matter, but I am curious, when they didn't go with the guy who spoke German, who did they go for that media? Is it
everybody
Sting
but the guy. And I'm not talking about the main event guys. I mean, they'd use them, but I would say they used half the bus. So if there were 25 guys on the bus, say, they probably used 10 to 12 people who were not crazy about doing promotion to begin with. And here I am. I've pitched it to the company, told them I'm working on it. It wasn't like I was working on it from scratch because I had the middle school German in there. I had a little background, but I would add to it. And I worked on it. I mean, I worked on it for a few hours every day to the point where I could handle myself with promos, but not just promos, but appearances. So I thought that's really something cool. And later on, when I went to, I think that night that I lost the year, I did cut a promo. And like a lot of things, it wasn't nearly as good after I did it as I thought it was while I was doing it. But I think basically I was saying, Vader, you say to, fight your fight. I say, live my life. Yeah, it's kind of corny now. But I was yelling it out there. And I could sing German folk songs. I just thought they knew, just like they knew it would have gotten over for me to be cutting impassioned promos in the United States after losing my ear, that they just decided not.
There's no plans for you. That's it.
Not to do it. They had to know it would have worked.
Sure.
And I don't think they wanted it to work.
Do you think when we're saying they, sometimes people really think we mean this guy or that guy?
Yeah.
But I've also heard from a lot of folks in WCW that, man, it was just, for lack of a better phrase, just a disorganized mess. Sometimes the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. So I almost wonder, did the person that you communicated, hey, I've learned German, I'd be excited to do some media over there, maybe that never got communicated to the media department within Turner?
You're giving them way too much credit.
Okay.
Right now. Yeah. No, somebody willingly dropped the ball. I think. See. Yeah, not mistakenly dropped it.
Do you have any idea who it would have been?
I don't.